Hi everyone. So a little while ago I posted a blog post on my site around how to query a particular SharePoint list in an on-prem environment with Intex Workflow and get a whole bunch of columns back with each column going into its own separate collection variable. And then how to iterate through uh, those collections and get the appropriate data for each row. So for example, if you have two collection variables, I want to get the first item in each collection variable and the second item in each collection variable, etc. So this post is going to be around an Office 365 version of that. So what you see here is a SharePoint list just called data. There's a title field, which is text, and a count field, which is a number field. Now what I want to be able to do is query this and get each of these values. So I'm going to jump over to my other tab and just show you how you can do this. You can actually do it the same way as you do it on-prem. So if you have a query list action, let's actually put that on there. We'll open this up and we'll select the data list. Let's minimize these. And then you specify which columns you want. But before we do that, rather than having a single output, you could actually do a separate output column for each value. So in this case, let's say we want to get the title and we want to store it in a collection data, and then maybe have the count field and store that in another collection variable, maybe called collection of numbers or collection count. So you can definitely do it that way. And then of course you can do the for each through that. And because there was a recent release around the collection variable in Intex Workflow, you can actually do some other things around getting the collection, getting data out of the collection. So getting an item from a collection, and you can do it based off a particular index. So let's clean this out. Now, there's actually another way of doing it. Again, we're going to use the query list action, and we're going to look at the data list. But in this case, we're actually going to do a single output, and we specify what columns we want to get back. In this case, title and count. And the data goes into a single collection variable called collection data. Now, if I actually jump over here, I'll actually show you what it looks like, because the next thing I do is actually do a log to the history list to get an idea of what kind of data is displayed. And you can see right here, this is actually what the collection looks like, right? Now, for those who actually don't know, collection, when you actually display it in a log action, it displays it in a comma separated way. So in this case, you can see there's right up to there is one item, and then you have a comma, then you have another one, and another one, another one, another one. So there's 5 of them there. But this section in here where it says title and then test 1 and count and 1, this is actually a dictionary. So what we can do is jump back to our workflow. We've done our query list action. We actually do a count, and that's just for me to be able to see how many items are in there to make sure I get the right number. In this case, we got 5, which is great. And then let's actually come down here, and we're doing a for each. Now, in the for each, we are specifying that we want to go through the collection of data, and each iteration through that collection, we're going to store the results in a dictionary called dict item, right? So that's going to be each item. And we're also storing the index just so we know what what index we're at in the collection. Now the next thing you do is you have a parallel block, right? Because we're going to get information out of that dictionary. So this one I'm actually going to put title, and in this one I'll put count. Right? I like to label my actions a little bit so I know what they're doing. Let's open up this get an item from a dictionary. Here's my dictionary name. I'm pulling out title, and I'm storing it in a text variable called title. So pretty easy. And in this one, we're going to do the same thing. This dictionary, we're going to pull out the count, and we're going to store it in a num count variable. Now, the reason why I know it's called title and count, apart from the name of the columns, is that when I look at the dictionary, you can see the actual name of the field right there, title and count. Right, it's just something to be aware of in case you do get something strange, or maybe it doesn't do the same thing if you have spaces in it. This is a good way to sort of debug this. So now, after this parallel block, we now have two variables, text title and num count that will have those values. And we also have an index from that for each action. So I'm going to open up this log action, and here we're storing the index, and we're showing title equals and count equals, right? So that's the type of text that we should see in that log, in the log message in the workflow history. So jump back into the workflow history, and now you can see we get 5 items. There's the index, and title equals test1, and count equals 1, and all that. So that's one, I find, an easy way to actually parse through a bunch of data that you've queried from a list. The cool thing is, if you need a specific item, you can definitely use this. Instead of using the for each, you can actually say get item from collection. You can definitely do it that way. You can do it in a loop if you want to, rather than a for each. I prefer the for each because it's a lot easier to use rather than with a loop. There's the potential for you to create an infinite loop, right? I don't like those, so for each, to iterate through each one of the results is my personal preference. You don't actually have to use the run this parallel block. You could actually just have the actions like this, right? So you can definitely do it that way. I sometimes like using the parallel block because really I like the fact that I can see exactly what it's doing, and it's kind of a nice chunk of workflow logic, and I know exactly what that's doing. I can actually relabel this and say, get all field values or something like that. So again, it's just another way of documenting this particular part of the workflow. So I hope this helps, but just so you know, if you want to do it the other way, uh, that I mentioned in my previous post, and I'll add a link to that in this blog post, feel free to do it that way as well. It's doable. The fact that we now have a collection variable in Intex workflow for Office 365 and all the corresponding actions, and the fact that we can do things like the query list action to use that collection variable really does make life a lot easier for when you're designing workflows. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to add the comments at the end of this blog post. Thanks for your time.